Hello everybody, and welcome to your video notes on Learning Target 6.2 at the MEETS level, which is work and power calculations. And we're going to do the MEETS level, which is specifically being able to algebraically manipulate the work and power equations to solve for any unknown variable. So as a reminder, the work equation is work equals force times distance, and power is power equals work divided by time. It's how quickly you can do work. So really, these two equations are used together a lot, especially if you're trying to calculate power. And before we get into these examples, I'm going to do these two examples for you, and then you're going to try to do these two examples on your own, and then I'll just show you my work. Work. Get it? But before I do that, I'm going to remind you on the guess strategy. And remember, guess stands for givens. Well, let's do it this way. So givens, so first you're going to figure out what the problem gives you. Then you're going to figure out the unknowns. So 1, 2. So what are we trying to find? What does the problem give us? And then which equations, or really in this one it's just going to be equation, are we going to use to solve the problem? And then in this step, this is where you're going to do your algebra then. And this is where you do your algebra step. Okay, so and then once you have your algebraic equation rearranged, then you would do your substitution and solve. Okay, so let's zoom in here and see what I'm talking about. We're gonna look at this one first. Let's call this number 1. So GUESS. Let's figure out our givens. Our givens are 250 joules and 6 meters. So this is going to be work, and this is going to be distance. So we've taken care of the given. Now the unknown, we're looking for force. So we're looking for an equation that has work, distance, and force in it. So if we go over here and look at our two equations, that would be this bad boy right here. So I'm going to write down work equals force times distance. Okay, we figured out the U, and we're working on the E right now. We need our equation. So we want this to say F equals because that's what we're trying to solve for. Currently it doesn't say that. These are being multiplied, so the way I'm going to undo that is with division. D's go away, so I'm left with F equals W over D. That's my equation now that I've used. Now all that I have to do is substitute and solve. Excuse the bell. Alright, so I've got F equals W, or my work, over the distance. Now I just have to substitute in. I've got my 250 joules divided by my distance, which is 6 meters. And to double check our units here, remember that a joule is a Newton times a meter. And I'm going to switch colors here. That means we got meters that cross out, and I'm left with newtons. And forces measured in newtons, so that means we set up our problem correctly. So then you grab your calculator and type in 250 divided by 6, and I get 41.6666666. So I'm going to round that and say 41.7 newtons equals my force. And that would be your answer. Next one, example number 2. Reminder that we've got our little guess framework that we're going to be using. So go ahead, pause, write this problem down. And then once you have the problem written down, we can start working on setting up the problem. So our givens are 550 watts and 3000 joules. The watts would be power and joules would be work. So we've taken care of our given. Our unknown, it says how much time. So this is what we're going to solve for. So we've got that as well. Now we need to figure out our equation. So if we go back up to our two equations that we're going to be using, we need one that has time, work, and power in it. And that's going to be the power equation. This is time, work, and power. So we're going to use this equation this time. So I'm going to start by writing P equals W over T. Power equals work divided by time. But this currently does not say T equals. I want to solve this for T. So I'm going to use a different color here. Let's use red. I want to solve this for T. Now the way we're going to do that is by multiplying both sides by T over 1. Now, do not make the mistake of multiplying by work, because if you multiply by work, you end up with W squared and nothing gets crossed out. A lot of people are going to make a mistake here, so don't be that person. If you multiply by T over 1, you've got a T on the top and a T on the bottom, so these two would cross out. I also have to do this over here, multiply by T over 1. And we end up with work equals power times time. Now, this does not say T equals yet, so then we have to do that next step, which is divide by power. And the P's go away, and I'm left with T equals work, or time equals work divided by power. Look at that, we got our equation. Now we just have to do these two steps, substitute and solve. So I'm going to go ahead and substitute. Okay, and so that's what I got. And then it's always a good idea to check your units. Remember that watts are really a joule per second. And so I'm going to switch colors again. I have joules on the top and the bottom, and I've got something over something seconds. So I'm left with seconds. Times measured in seconds. I have it set up properly. I'm going to type in this into my calculator. Enjoy the music while I do. And I get a whole bunch of repeating things, but I end up with 5.45 if I round, and then my units are seconds. And that's my answer. So then there are these two examples. I would like you to try to do them on your own. Go ahead and pause, write down the problems, do your guessing for both of them. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, and then once I have the answers on the screen, I'll go ahead and show them to you. And here's the answer that I got for the first problem that you try on your own. So I found that I needed to solve this for distance because it's asking for how high, and I'm given force and work. So then I use my work equation, I rearrange it, solve it for D, and I end up with this equation right here. Switch colors again. End up with this equation right here, and then I substitute in. I made sure that I did my units correctly. Joules are Newton meters. The newtons go away. I'm left with meters. So I did that correctly. So let's see if we can work on this one now. Again, pause, try it, and I'll show the answer here shortly. And here you have it. We've started with, so I got 0.25 or a quarter of a second, which is pretty quick, but I think you could do this. Anyway, so the setup is I start with looking for time. I'm given work and watts, so that tells me I'm going to be using my power equation. We solve this for T. I'm doing the algebra that was previously explained, and then we substitute in and solve. And then I like to check my units, so I made sure I reminded myself, hey, a watt is a joule per second, so then the joules get crossed out and I'm left with seconds. And there you have it. That's how you do your calculations. Thanks for listening.